Welcome to Swords to Podcast. Welcome back. Welcome in, everybody, to the Swords to Podcast. I'm Adam.
And I'm Thomas. So today we're going to be talking about the bracket system. So it's been just over 6 months since it was first announced back in early February. And we're going to take a little retrospective and see how they're feeling now and maybe what we think needs to be changed.
Yep. We're also going to take a look at the Game Changers list. We're going to talk about what we think might need to go on the Game Changers list, what we think we can take off the Game Changers list, and just our general thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. So just to start, we'll do a quick reminder of how the actual bracket system works. So the whole idea here is it's a way to get the Rule Zero conversation going. So it's at its core a communication tool for your pregame conversations to say, hey, what types of decks are we playing? What power level? Power level is like the pseudo name for the old system, but brackets are the official ones. So you have 1 through 5. 1 is going to be exhibition, 2 is core, 3 is upgraded, 4 is optimized, and 5 is CEDH. Now, we'll actually go in reverse order. So CEDH are going to be those super 100% built to win competitive decks, and that fits in its own core. CEDH has kind of always been its own distinct category. Now, level 4, by the way that Wizards wants to classify it, is going to be turbocharged, optimized decks. So they are intended to win, but it's just a little bit different from CEDH because it's not playing around any specific meta. It's finely tuned in what it is looking to do, but it's not looking to win in a specific meta, right? And so then going down, you have your bracket 3 upgraded. And these are decks that have some game changers in them, but they're not finely tuned, optimized. They're just high-powered decks that aren't necessarily built as strongly as those higher bracket 4 types of decks. So the difference here with what we'll go lower in the list is this is where you'll start to see up to 3 game changers, which we'll get into a little bit later. Then the big thing with upgraded is you're not going to have any mass land denial and no chaining of extra turns. You maybe can have 1 or 2 in there, but nothing infinite, nothing crazy. And if you're going to have any 2-card combos, it's going to be late game. The difference here is that 4 and 5 have 0 restrictions. So then we'll move it down. The core is going to have 0 game changers, and you can have a few tutors, but we're going to have no game changers, no mass land denial, no extra turns period, no 2-card combos. And these are right about where your pre-con decks are going to fall, at least for the future. Some of the older pre-cons, those might have been a little bit more powerful, but moving forward, that's where Wizards is going to throw all of their pre-constructed commander decks for whichever sets they're coming out with. And then finally, we have our exhibition level. So these very similar to your core deck in all of the restrictions. However, these are more of a flavorful type of deck. They fit a theme, unique ideas, whether that's I only picked cards with this type of art in them, or it has to be cards that have these words integrated in the card somewhere. So those are your types of decks you'll see in that exhibition tier. It's more of a flavorful and just fun. And so that's a general overview of brackets 1 through 5. So Adam, little retrospective, how are we feeling being just over 6 months into the system on how it's been working so far in the community?
Well, I think there's pros and cons, obviously, that we've come to see. The big thing that most people talked about was with this system is going from essentially 10 initial power levels to 5 power brackets. You lose, some of the conversation of those numbers in between, essentially. But something that I've seen that has obviously evolved from this system is strong and weak. So, for example, when if I talk about an upgraded deck that I have that is a power bracket 3, there's still some flexibility within that 3. So I might say this is a deck that is an upgraded pre-con with maybe 15 extra cards in it, and it's a weak three. So it'll sit there at the table with, it'll hang with other threes if I'm playing at a table with all of them, but it's not going to be the arch enemy. It's not going to be at the forefront of that game. And then the same thing goes with strong three. So this deck is more than capable of hanging with other threes, but it's strong. So it'll power out quickly maybe, or it'll create a very large board presence, and it'll take over the game. And so you might have little archenemy things to deal with there. And so I like that. I like that people have taken sort of the downside of this system and turned it into an additional piece to help with rule zero, because that's really, a lot of people consider this as a deck building constraint, which, that is correct. All the popular deck building sites now are sorting your decks into categories or into power brackets and doing that sort of thing. But I really like the way that the community has kind of added these bits of conversation to help them more accurately match make as this system is intending. So I'm all for it. We've taken the bad and turned it good, and I'm with that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I guess when we're going back to that whole power level versus power bracket conversation, most players, when they were talking about power, it was pretty common for them to say, it's about a 7, or it's about a 5, or oh, nothing great. Like, felt a lot more arbitrary, the numbers that you were giving it, because it was just 1 through 10. It was just how you felt about how you built it. But these, giving specific rules and constraints for each bracket, really helps that part of the conversation. And then I think it's great that you mention the fact that you have your strong versus your weak, because that opens up the next question, is really how wide are these brackets? Because there definitely is a difference. The line between each can be a little bit fuzzy at times, and I think that's the most so with 3 to 4. People aren't always exactly sure the difference between a 3 and a 4. Not as much as it's obvious between a 1 and a 2, or a 4 and a 5. So the opposite ends of the spectrum are a lot more definitive, but in the 2 to 4 range, you're getting a little more into the weeds, and it's a lot more fuzzy on where everything is going to sit. And so that's the next thing that I want to open you up to, is how wide really are these tiers, right? And how do you really make that distinction outside of the definitive restriction for each level of where your deck is actually going to fit?
Well, I think sometimes it can boil down to almost intent, really. Obviously you've got your exhibition decks that you don't care if you win. Your bracket 2 decks are, you're trying to play some stronger cards, but really at the end of the day, if you lose, you're not going to be upset because you didn't build this deck to be optimized or strong. 3 is where you begin to see the addition of game changers and infinite combos, where you're trying to close out the game and you kind of come to the table to win. You want your deck to do the thing. You want you want to play your commander, and you want to take game actions here. And then in 4, sort of everything goes out the window. You'll see most people play 4 when they don't really care about how their opponents feel. If I'm playing a 3, I go to the table and I don't really expect to win. I don't even necessarily want to win. I want to see my opponents have a good time. I want everybody at the table to be able to play the game and enjoy it. But most of that enjoyment comes from just playing the game. When I sit down with a 4, that enjoyment comes from less about myself and my opponents playing the game, and more about myself and my opponents playing strong things and doing strong things. If I look across the table and someone just drew 30 cards, I'm not going to be upset about that. I'm going to be like, wow, this guy just drew 30 cards. This is a really cool deck.
Yeah.
And so while the brackets are very wide, the awesome thing about this being a multiplayer game is if someone has a deck that, they said was a 3, but it's probably leaning closer to a 4, you can team up and threat assess that person back down to your level. So being a multiplayer game makes this bracket system so flexible, as far as you have some leeway when you come to the table with a deck that might not be exactly the bracket that that you say it is. That's not That's not saying that you'll always have bad actors and people that lie about their brackets, but that's not a reflection of the system. I don't think. I think that's a reflection of that person in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because the big thing here is that it's really supposed to be a communication tool. It's whatever you think fits your deck the best. So you can have someone who only builds your, high power decks. They're not playing CEDH, but they're building high power decks every time they go to build a deck. So they're going to be sitting in that bracket 4 slot and really only be interested in playing with people that are also building stuff that they feel is on that bracket 4 level. And that goes to, your regular play group, or if you're looking for someone else, that's really where that comes in as the actual communication tool. And I think that's a good way to put it. And it's also worth it to be said that certain people may have what they think is a bracket 4 deck, but they can't really play it like a bracket 4, so it turns out to really play like a 3, right? Or they may say, hey, it's a bracket 3, but they're so well tuned with that deck. They're such a great pilot that they play it and it can compete at those bracket 4 tables, right?
Yeah.
So there really is just a lot of overlap, I think, and that's why I think these walls are a little fuzzy, where you can really bounce between depending on who you're playing with, how you're deciding to play the deck in that pod, and even back down to what you choose as your opening hand, right? You can choose the terrible opening hand, you do nothing all game, and you might as well have built a bracket 1 deck, right? You're just playing for the fun of the
Yep.
game at that point. Um, so I think there's a lot of really interesting ways to look at these lines. Because I don't think they ever intended for it to be you have to fit into one category. Um, so that's what I think is definitely a strength there.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question that I'm gonna have for you is gonna be: have you had any fun, maybe not so fun, maybe horror stories, whichever it is, kind of regarding this system? Has anything happened to you personally at some of these tables, whether that's with your normal play group or whoever else, that you wanted to share in these first 6 months?
Well, I can't say anything specific, whether that be good or bad, comes to mind. I have had, plenty of pregame conversations. Normally, when I sit down at the table, I'm the one who's yapping the most about decks because I'd rather talk too much and annoy people and then have the game be good than, not talk enough and have someone else feel alienated because they didn't understand the decks that we were bringing to the table. Um, I've had I've had situations where people definitely downplay their decks, but like I said earlier, nothing bad ever came of it. Either they won the game and we moved on and shuffled up and played another, or we saw that they were playing something very strong and they came out and played a Soul Ring into an Arcane Signet into a Mana Dork turn one, and we understood that they were going to be the archenemy. So um, I can't say I've had anything super terrible happen as a result of these brackets, because at the end of the day, even if the brackets are terrible, you don't have to use them. You can you can have pregame conversations without them and say, okay, I'm playing a demonic tutor in this deck, um, but it's only because I pulled it out of a pack 2 years ago and I love the art on it. That's fine. You can have those kind of conversations and say, okay, this guy's deck is theoretically a 3, but it's just a precon with a demonic tutor in it. So you can, I think I think they've been really good for me. I don't have any specific things that happen good or bad. Do you have anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's been pretty similar for me. It's been a great tool, definitely, for deciding which decks I'm gonna play, because I always love to have some choice in the decks that I bring to a commander night, whatever it may be, because you never know who you're gonna play with. So I have some people that I normally play with, or nothing crazy, maybe like around year 3, but it really depends on who we bring in. So we'll bring in our random and we'll ask, hey, like, what types of decks did you bring, or what are you looking to play? And that'll at least help me decide what I'm gonna play. But I've also had those situations too where you're like, yeah, I had this demonic tutor, just so you guys know it's in the deck. It's nothing crazy. Where it was a little similar. I used to have this Aminatu Veil Piercer. I upgraded the precon heavily. I ended up taking it apart because it kind of did the same thing over and over, and I felt myself every single game being like, guys, I promise this is the only, two card combo that I have. But then it was every single game that I was pulling it out because it was the one of the only ways that that deck could actually win, and it just didn't really feel very good because I wanted to make it a bracket four. It was playing like a three, which I didn't love, but again, it was just that 1 2 card combo was the only way that I was winning, and I really hated that. So that was the big thing for me is, having that conversation with them, like, guys, this is the only thing that it does. I promise. But you can only promise every so many times. It was like a boy who cried wolf. Like, guys, I swear, I swear it's not optimized, but it kind of was. So uh, that was my biggest thing with that. Other than that, I do agree. It's been a very efficient system so far when you're just looking at it as the social tool it is. So the only other thing that I wanted to throw your way, Adam, is going to be the pricing. So when we're talking about, budget builds, do you have to put expensive cards in to make it better? Is that what people are thinking? And this will eventually lead into our game changer type of list, but ignoring that part of it first, just on like the price of the cards. Do you think that, building like $1,000 decks is gonna make it so that you can't compete in your bracket three or your bracket two, whatever it is? Do you have any opinions on that side of things?
I don't think budget should have a place on a bracket system like this. I think budget is definitely something that makes sense to put or to talk about as part of your pregame conversation, as your rules or your turn zero conversation. Um, but at the end of the day, budget never is equivalent to the power level of a deck. You can build. I mean, people make this example all the time, but you can build a 5 color deck with all the game changers and all the dual lands in the deck, and it won't function at all. So there's clearly a side where you can go to where you can go too far with build playing with expensive and powerful cards, where it won't help you no matter how many game changers or how many dual lands you put in your deck. But I think the budget generally does follow the brackets, where I mean, my CEDH deck is a 5, and it's the most expensive deck that I own by far. Um, the only deck that I would consider a 4 is then the next expensive, and my lowest deck, which is a bracket 2, is worth about $40. So I think a lot of decks do follow budget, but it would be very easy to make a bracket 2 deck that costs more than my bracket 4. It wouldn't be hard.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't think it should go on the game changers list, or sorry, not the game changers. I don't think it should go. I don't think it should become a part of the bracket system, but it's definitely something important that you can mention as a part of your turn zero conversation.
Yeah, so that's gonna be my biggest kind of segue here is the mana base. It's well established that your mana base is a lot of where the price of your deck can kind of come from, because you can build a really strong deck with some a lot more budget friendly cards, but your mana base is what really elevates that. Like in a CEDH deck, you're not gonna go anywhere if you don't have the mana base to support it. If you can't get everything going on like your turn one or two, which will not happen with a budget land base. So it's obviously not, for the most part, it's not part of the bracket system now. But where do you think that ties into these brackets, and I guess in the budget conversation as well?
Land base in general,
Yeah.
frankly, I don't think it ties in at all. I mean, look at how well Magda does at CDH tables, and that is a land base full of mountains.
Well, that's
Um,
also a monocolor deck. Like
yeah.
when
Well,
we're talking about our
I
five
think land
color.
base I think land base is important, but land base only becomes that important when you build a strong deck. I mean, I think a three with dual lands is going to perform fairly similar to a three without. Um,
Yeah,
Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you should never build an optimized land base, but it's also even easier nowadays to build a budget land base. You've got so many of the dual
true.
lands that are reprinted every year in the precons that enter tapped and enter untapped during with different conditions. I mean, I've got a box about this thick with cards that are just budget lands that tap for 2 or 3 mana, and I mean, all of my mana bases are fairly cheap and they support my decks. I mean, my four doesn't have a single shock land in it because I don't need it. But
That
I
was
definitely see what you're saying.
that was going to be my question too, because I'm the same way. I only have, well, actually, I took shocks out of. I don't have shocks in any deck right now. I have fetches in my CEDH deck, but I have an entire pile of all my extra shocks. I don't have really any extra fetches, but either way, I don't put those in any other deck. I could. There's no reason I can't, but I just don't need to. And so I'm sitting at tables and I'm seeing other people playing these lands, and I'm like, I mean, that's cool. I don't love that you're doing that because I feel like you don't need to playing like your bracket three, but that's kind of where I wanted to throw the whole budget conversation to is you could be playing these expensive cards, but you can do just as well without. So if that's what you're thinking, that lands really should have no effect on maybe where they're placed. I think that they do something. They help a little bit, but it does depend on what you have throughout the rest of your deck, filling out the rest of your slots, right?
Yeah.
So with that, did you have anything else to add about the bracket system so far?
No final thoughts. I'm actually looking forward um, to the next announcement on the brackets. I'm excited to see where things go from here.
Definitely, yeah. Maybe we'll see it here at the end of the month in our future panel, right?
Yeah, that would be interesting. So, shall we move on to the game changers?
Definitely. Let's get right into it.
All right. So, this is going to be my section of the podcast. We're going to go through these in the organization that they have on the Wizards graphic, which is by color. And we're going to go through and talk about any ones that we think stand out, anything that we think might need to come off, any predictions we have about the next edition of the game changers list, and so on and so forth. So before we get into the full list, I'd like to kind of clarify what the game changers are supposed to be, and I'd like to highlight a specific phrase that Gavin Verhey uses. He says, "Game changers dramatically warp commander games, allowing players to run away with resources, shift games in ways that many players dislike, block people from play, efficiently search for the strongest cards, or have commanders that tend to take away from more casual games." So I like that first bit where the cards dramatically warp commander games, but something that we'll get into in a second is I don't believe that commanders themselves have a place on this list, but we'll get there. So, starting off on our list with the white game changers, we're going to go through these by color, and we're going to list the ones that are currently on the list, and then we're going to talk about which ones we think need to come off versus, maybe some cards that might need to go on the list. So, the white game changers are Drannith Magistrate, Enlightened Tutor, Humility, Smothering Tithe, and Teferi's Protection. So, at first glance, it's an okay list, but I think personally two of these need to come off: Humility and Teferi's Protection. I will say I'm a little biased to Teferi's Protection, simply because I've never played it, I've never played against it, I've never had it happen in a game, I've never been blown out by Teferi's Protection. All I know is holding open 3 mana in white multiple turns totally sets you back miles when you're playing in that color. But like I said, I haven't played against it, so I may be wrongfully biased against it. So if you have any experiences with Teferi's Protection that you believe that it should be on the game changers list, feel free to throw that in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. But Thomas, what do you think about the five white game changers?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting first that the two game changers that you think should get removed in the white section are the two that were added, just added. Um, so I love that. But I don't disagree. So I think when we're talking about the actual definition, right, of game changer, Teferi's protection doesn't really fit that bill, in my opinion, because it's an instant and it just protects you one time. I mean, it's great in the right situation, but compared to some of these other ones, right? You got your enlightened too because it gives you a resource advantage. So smothering tithe gives you all these treasures, all this mana, right? When opponents are drawing cards, which they're going to draw a ton of cards. Enlightened Tutor gives you whatever cards you need. Draenith Magistrate, big stacks piece. So these all serve a very, very clear and unbalanced purpose, and I think that that's why they fit the bill. But Teferi's protection, that's just your one-time protection. I mean, it's an instant. It's not like it gets exiled or nothing. So yeah, you can recur it, but I just don't think it's. I think with the amount of resources you have to throw into it, that 3 mana first of all, plus trying to get it back if that's what you're going for, it just feels a little bit too resource intensive to really fit this bill, especially when you have a 1 mana enlightened tutor to find any artifact or enchantment that you need. So that's
Yeah,
the Teferi's protection side. Humility, I don't hate it. Um, Obviously a stacks piece. Every creature on the battlefield, including your own, losing all abilities is pretty big. Um, Especially when you pair it with a board wipe, but not just a board wipe. Like a black board wipe where all creatures get like -1, something like that. You know, it 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 works with those types of abilities, but yeah, just the one-sided aspect of it. The stacks pieces are usually good because they're one-sided, like your Draenith Magistrate, where it's only your opponent's getting affected. So I that's why I don't love it. Um, but I can see more of a case of humility staying on the list than Teferi's protection.
yeah. Now, Thomas, do you think there are any white cards that should go on this list? Because I don't.
Nothing that I can. Let me restart. Ugh. Nothing that really comes to the mind right away. I think white is a really powerful color. I love playing it in limited, but in Commander, it's never been known to have some of the craziest pieces. And
Mhm.
I don't think Idyllic Tutor has a spot at 3 mana. That's the only thing that
No,
I could think of, but I wouldn't throw it on the list. So nothing for
no.
me.
3 mana for that ability is very fair, I think. Yeah, so let's move on to blue. And this list consists of Consecrated Sphinx, Cyclonic Rift, Expropriate, Fierce Guardianship, Force of Will, Gifts Ungiven, Intuition, Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur, Mystical Tutor, Narset Parter of Veils, Rhystic Study, Sway of the Stars, Thassa's Oracle, and Urza Lord High Artificer. So again on this list, I have a few that I think could come off pretty reasonably. Um, So, Consecrated Sphinx, very broken card. I think that should stay. Psych Rift, Expropriate, Fierce Guardianship, Force of Will, those are all very strong instants and sorceries. I think those belong on this list. Gifts Ungiven, Intuition, very powerful tutors. Gifts Ungiven was just unbanned. I think those are also very deserving of the list. The first one that I think can come off is Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur. Now, I know that this card is a very oppressive one, and I know that there is never any time where you are going to be paying 10 mana for this card. But I think that this card goes in a very specific kind of deck that is interacted with in a specific way. So this card is very frequently in reanimator style decks, and when you play those kinds of decks, this plan is very telegraphed. The person playing this deck will most likely have to mill this card before they can reanimate it in any kind of way. And so you have windows with which you can interact with it. And at the end of the day, your opponents still have a turn before they have to discard their hands. Now, that's not a very fun ability, and I don't play this card in any decks, nor do I really plan on doing it. But I just don't, I think the ability is strong, but it's the way to cheat the mana cost is very telegraphed. So I don't think it deserves to be on the list. Mystical Tutor can stay. Narset Parter of Veils, Rhystic Study, those can stay as well. Sway of the Stars is one that, like the white game changers I mentioned, has just been put on the list. It was removed from the ban list, and everything removed from the ban list in the recent unbans was moved immediately right to the game changers list. But Sway of the Stars, without a doubt in my mind, can go. It reads, it's 8 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Each player shuffles his or her hand, graveyard, and permanents he or she owns into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. Each player's life total becomes 7. So this essentially restarts the game. Everybody draws 7, and everybody's life total becomes 7. You're paying 10 mana to restart the game. It's fairly difficult to break parity, especially in blue. I think this is just a very expensive bomb that if you cast it, sure, it's an interesting thing, but the ability in itself is not, it's not inherently easy to abuse or running away with games or warping the game in any way. You're just restarting it. Thassa's Oracle, the best win condition in the game, can stay. And the last one that I think should come off is Urza, Lord High Artificer. Urza is only strong he's always strong. He's only inherently broken in decks where he is at the helm and the deck is built around him. Urza is very strong when paired with stacks pieces, and so that game plan is very easily telegraphed unless he's in your command zone. If he's in the command zone, then it's a problem. But there are so many commanders that you inherently know are going to be strong, and so you can rule 0 commanders like Urza and even Jin Kataxis, the other card that I want off this list. You can rule 0 those and say, okay, guys, you probably shouldn't be playing Urza at a bracket 2 table. That's not something you need the brackets to tell you. That's not something you need the game changers list to tell you. It's a strong card in the command zone, and it's gonna lend itself to that sort of deck. What are your thoughts, Thomas? I know Jin Gitaxis is probably not one you expected from me, but
Yeah.
I
Let
said what I
me
said.
yeah, I'll actually move in reverse for these. So with Urza, I think when we're talking about the commanders on the list, it's going to be a different story on where they can fit. Urza is pretty obvious. He's great in the command zone. Um, so I don't disagree with that aspect of it, but I think he's so powerful for a lot of different reasons. Um, Mostly being an infinite mana sink. Um, there's a lot of really broken things that Urza can do, and that's why I would be a little bit hesitant to take him off the list. Because even then, I think I've seen lists where they play him in the 99, and he just does Urza things. It's pretty disgusting what he can do. Um, he kind of goes back. I know that this was maybe like 2 episodes ago at this point, but with the Cabbage Merchant seems so cool. Tap 2 foods to add a mana. This taps 1 artifact, which is so much more than just food. So he is inherently pretty broken. I wouldn't take him off the list personally, but it really goes into the question of is he just on the list because of him in the command zone versus in the 99. But I think either way he just he does his thing. He's Urza. Everyone knows who Urza is. They see Urza and they're like, oh great, okay. So this game is out the door. But let's move on because Sway of the Stars, I completely agree. I don't think this card is very good. A lot of the cards that we'll see that they took off the ban list, they're just not that good anymore. Um, so Sway of the Stars is one of those. It's 10 mana at sorcery speed. So you're dumping 10 mana to restart the game, which inherently puts you at a disadvantage because now you're 10 mana gone when everyone else gets to restart. Well, I mean, I guess you lose all your lands too. Yeah, either way, this I don't need to stay on this one. I do not like this card. Just stuff that puts everyone at the same level. I don't think that's a big change unless you're so incredibly behind and you just so happen to be able to rock it out in front of everybody. That's the only way that I could see this being great, but still.
Yeah.
So Jinga Taxis, I could go either way. I think he could stay, he could leave. It's it you have a good point that they don't lose their hand size until the end of their turn after. But he also gives you 7 extra cards to play with until it gets back to your turn. So that's the only thing that I'll say. And you're right about, cheating him in and all that. But, I don't think he's crazy enough. But I think the reason why he's on the list is just with that whole resource denial and putting yourself ahead. I think that's where, by definition, he fits on the list. But it he's a little bit more balanced than some of these other cards, right? Just with that whole timing issue and having to wait for it to really affect people. So Jenga Texas, I think by definition fits on the list. The one thing I want to say before I get into the next one that you mentioned was Gifts Ungiven. So Gifts Ungiven and Intuition were both put on the list. I think that they both have a great spot, but I just think it's really fun since Gifts Ungiven was unbanned to see what people are doing because Intuition has been that line for a long time in CEDH where you find your little pile, your Intuition pile of 3 cards, and you have all your win con. You're figuring out what's the best way that someone can choose which card you get. But now Gifts Ungiven makes it a little bit interesting too because yeah, it's 1 extra mana, but you get 1 extra card, so it opens you up to a little bit of a different strategy there, and people have been coming up with some really unique piles. Gifts piles is now what those are because they're 4 cards. So I just wanted to throw that out there that I love Gifts Ungiven. It has been so much fun since that little guy's been unbanned. Um, so let's see. The next thing I believe that you said expropriate belonged on the list. I don't necessarily agree because for a similar reason that I didn't like Sway the Stars is that this one is 9 mana, which is a lot at sorcery speed. Now, no one who has, I mean, depending on what's on the board, if you have half a brain, you're not going to vote for, you're not going to vote for time. Like you're not giving people extra turns. But I think that's the reason why it's on the list is for those extra turns. But everyone is going to choose, money and give you a permanent. Um, but and I know that you get to choose the permanent, but you're also kind of banking on the fact that they have something that's worth taking. And that's the only thing that I don't love. I don't love betting on somebody else to have something that's worth taking because yeah, this could be a game ender if they have some crazy stuff on their board, but even then it might be crazy because it works in their strategy and you're just pulling it away either to take away from their what they're doing or to in the best case scenario give yourself something, but it's not always guaranteed that you're going to get that game ender from somebody else. So that's the only reason I don't love expropriate. Plus it gets exiled. So that's kind of where I stand on these blue cards. So I don't know. I know you might not agree with everything that I said, but I think we we agreed on a couple there. Sway the Stars. Actually, that might be the only one. Sway the
That was the only
Stars.
one we agreed on.
Yeah,
Well,
but
also, I'll tell you another one we agree on. I don't hate your take on expropriate. The only reason I think it belongs on the ban list is because the floor is a 9 mana extra turn spell, right? And the ceiling is obviously finding ways to abuse it by copying it while it's on the stack. And my only reason that I think it should stay on the game changers list is because you're in colors that are inherently good at that. You're in blue. It's the best color for copying instants and sorceries on the stack.
is the
Um,
floor really an extra turn spell if no one chooses time?
yes, because you get to vote.
Oh, Hmm. I might have to take back what I said.
Well, I think it could come off. I mean, it is 9 mana
Yeah, I don't
at
love 9
sorcery
mana.
speed.
That's what I
Like
hate.
you know,
Yeah.
it's hard to cheat it out like something, or it's harder to cheat it out. When you have something like comparatively to something like Jin Taxes. But Yeah, I think it's just too easy to, once you put it on the stack, to abuse it and copy it with your Krark trigger and
Yeah,
whatever. But
yeah,
shall we move on?
definitely. Yes.
All right, next up is black. We've got Ad Nauseum, Bolus's Citadel, Braid's Cabal Minion, Demonic Tutor, Imperial Seal, Necropotence, Opposition Agent, Orcish Bowmasters, Turgrid God of Fright, and Vampiric Tutor. Oh, excuse me. There's two that I consider to be able to be taken off of the list, but I'm only gonna say that one should come off the list, and that is Braid's Cabal Minion.
Yeah.
So Braid's Cabal Minion is 2 mana and 2 black for a 2/2 legendary human minion, and she reads that at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So Braids is a very oppressive card and was just taken off the ban list as well as some of the other ones we talked about taking off the Game Changers list. But Braids in the 99 is not oppressive. It's, not something that will happen consistently, and I think that's the strongest appeal of Braids is putting her in the command zone and having her ability keep coming back even when your opponents remove her. So I think that putting her in the command zone makes it obvious what your deck is doing, and your opponents will mulligan until they have removal. They will, they're able to play around Braids very well when she's in the command zone, and so I think that she could come off the Game Changers list. The other one that I'll mention is Turgrid, another commander. She is 3 mana and 2 black for a 4/5 legendary god with menace, and whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control.
I
So
believe she
again,
flips.
Turgrid is very
I think there's more to Turgrid on the other side, isn't there?
yeah.
Turgrid's Lantern, come on. Can't talk about the card not finish.
That's not the important side. All right, all right. Turgrid also has a flip side that you can cast from your hand or the command zone or wherever she is, and that is Turgrid's Lantern. It's 3 and a black for a legendary artifact that you can tap it to target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. And you can also pay 3 colorless and 1 black to untap Turgrid's Lantern.
Oh my, game changer. That 2 words, game changer. Wow.
The only reason that I think Turgrid can stay on this list is because the discard and sacrifice archetype in black is so strong without her that you can fully build a deck around the archetype and have her as a secret commander, essentially. So you can come up to the table with a deck with no game changers in it, but if Turgrid is in it, it becomes very easy to find any of the budget tutors, anything like that, and put Turgrid onto the battlefield. I think she's just as oppressive from the 99 as she is in the command zone. And so I think Turgrid should stay. But everything else I think should stay. I think Braids can come off. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I think most of these cards are a home run. I think Braids doesn't really have a slot here. Braids is good in Turgrid. I don't
Yep.
I don't even love her as like her own commander. I just personally like nowadays it's just not, it doesn't impress me that much. It's yeah, like you can sacrifice, you get to choose artifact, creature, or land. Like yeah, that is powerful. You have to do it once a turn, but like come on. Like it's just not it doesn't change the game. I feel like a lot of these other cards do when your opponents can, keep increasing their board state to play around it, to throw a lot of duds in there that when they sacrifice, it's not going to hurt them in the slightest. Turgrid is her own question. Her ability is very busted, but that comes with its own drawback. If she's in her command zone, she is a lightning rod for removal. You are not gonna be able to spend a whole lot of turns having Turgrid out on the field. And in black, there are some pretty decent ways to keep her alive with with some auras that when they die bring it back, those types of pieces. But like you're in mono black with her, her at the helm, and so your opponents, every single one of them is going to do everything in their power to keep her off the field, and that's what I think is the big balancer. But you're right. In the 99, she's pretty good, but it's the same type of issue. They see Turkwood hit the field, and it's like, nope, not going to let that happen. And then she's even harder to bring back if she's not in your command zone. So that's about all that I'll say there. You don't see a lot of people playing Turgid because it's inherently not a very fun commander to play. People know that, um, and yeah, the second half is that like they're not going to let you play it if you think that it's fun. So that's what I'll say. I think the Braids can go, Turgid can stay, I guess, but you know, even then, I still don't think that she's anything super scary in the long term.
Makes sense. I agree. Next up is red. This is a very short list. We've got Deflecting SWAT, Gamble, Jessica's Will, and Underworld Breach. I don't have any comments on this. I think this is a good list. Short but sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, home runs all the way. I can't believe Deflecting SWAT wasn't on the list before. That was one that was added along with Gamble, which again,
Yep.
it's it's a
Most efficient
tutor.
red tutor.
Yeah. Right into your hand. Yeah, you have to discard one at random, but like, come on. It's in home runs. All four.
Yep. Okay. Next up, green. This is Crop Rotation, Food Chain, Natural Order, Seedborn Muse, Survival of the Fittest, Vornkleck's Voice of Hunger, and Worldly Tutor. Right off the bat, Food Chain, not a game changer. It's not. It's a combo piece that is not really generically good outside of it.
Huh.
The only reason that I think it's on the game changers list is because it's a combo piece with a lot of commanders.
So
Um,
it's a weird thing to say.
essentially,
I don't know. It's just such a
Weird take.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah?
keep going. Keep going. I don't want to
yeah,
step on your gas.
yeah. I just don't. I don't think it's that good of a card. I mean, you have to have creatures to sacrifice, and you're not able to effectively cheat with this card. You know, you have to have creatures that cost mana. You can sacrifice your tokens for 1 mana, but there's other ways to get efficient mana with tokens. I think all the rest of these can stay. Vorinclex is one of the commanders that I'll keep on this list simply because he does exactly what the little paragraph from Gavin says, where he warps the game and just totally denies resources. When someone has a Vorinclex, even in the 99, and they play it, you're in green. So you're gonna see this guy 8 mana, turn 4. You're gonna see him very quickly, especially if he's in the command zone, and you know, resource denial. You're losing essentially your lands are tapping half as often, and it's just a very very strong ability, and I think very warranted of being on the game changers list.
Sure.
But now here come the hot takes from Thomas.
Hot takes. I in green? No, I barely play enough green to have any hot takes here. But what I will say, yeah, Vorinclex, just this is his home. Worldly Tutor, sure. Survival of the Fittest, great. Seedborn Muse, yeah. Uh, these other three, I don't know, man. So Natural Order. I wanna mention a different card as well, Eldritch Evolution, and just as a little comparison. So Eldritch Evolution is a similar effect, so it's also a sorcery, but it's 3 mana, 1 and 2 green instead of the 2 and 2 green, and you sacrifice any creature and search up any creature with mana cost 2 plus the sacrifice creature's CMC and put that onto the battlefield.
Or less, yeah, or less.
And then you exile Eldritch Evolution. So a little drawback there. Natural Order costs more. You have to exile, or excuse me, sacrifice a green creature, and you can only search for a green creature. Now, granted, you can, sacrifice a Llanowar Elves and, search up a Vorinclex, which it has those potential. It has that potential of getting really big there, but Eldritch Evolution is a lot more versatile when it can fit into decks with other colors. In a green deck, natural order, game changer. But in some other decks, I don't think it has as much of a place. So that's the only thing that I'll say.
I disagree. The thing is, if you're playing green, you're gonna have all these dorks, and I think you'd be wrong to not play most of these dorks.
Yeah.
In addition to whatever other green creatures you're playing. But if you're gonna mention that natural order lets you play Vorinclex on turn 4,
I mean,
and
turn
say
3 if you have
Vorinclex
a
deserves
dork.
to be, yeah, and then
Yeah, okay.
tell me
Well,
that
when you're gonna
Vorinclex
When you're gonna
deserves
put
to
it
be
that
on the
way.
Game Changers list.
when you're gonna put it that way, I'm not trying to say that natural order doesn't belong on the game changers list. I'm just saying
Oh,
that
okay.
Eldritch Evolution is also a great card. So where does
Yeah,
it
but it's not even
where does it
close.
rank?
Oh,
Well,
it's not. It's not even close.
yeah, okay.
The thing is,
I guess I can
it's a
put
good
that.
card, but it doesn't warp the game. That's what
Yeah, okay,
where I'm
yeah.
getting at.
I guess that's a good point because it has like the combo potential, and I guess the biggest place that I can think of it is when we get into this next card right here, Food Chain. Finds your squee. Oh, I love that. Find squee. Find me silly. 3 mana colorless. Whatever. Finds your squee. We'll leave it at
Finds your
that.
Eternal Scourge.
It's Eternal Skirt. Oh, I should know. I don't know. I can't think of that.
But
Well,
yeah.
the thing is,
so-
in green, you have so much mana in green. The last thing that I would be worried about in green, like, notice how I didn't even mention the aspect of Vorinclex that doubles your mana? Because that matters so little in comparison to his other ability. I think Food Chain is
it matters
giving
a
you
lot
a
still,
boatload of
but
mana. He's giving you giving you a boatload of mana in a color that you don't have a problem with that.
Well, I think Food Chain is only a game changer because it goes infinite with Eternal Scourge, which is going to be in. You don't even have to add red if you're not trying to put squee in. So that's why Food Chain is the driving force of so many of these like CEDH commanders. There's however many commanders that can play Food Chain and do it pretty efficiently. Atali plays Food Chain, like Corval, like all these commanders. So that's the reason why I think Food Chain is sticking on the list. But yeah, when it comes to Eldritch Evolution, that is a card. Me personally, I actually keep going back and forth on keeping it in my Food Chain deck. But I just wanted to throw it out there because for one mana less, it does find you the combo pieces, I guess. But yeah, I guess you're right. If we want to go direct, a Llanowar Elves for a Vorinclex on turn 3, I mean you can't beat that. So I'll take my L on that one. But this is the big one, Adam, and I think you knew that this is where I was going.
Here it comes.
Crop
Plug your ears,
rotation.
everybody.
No, listen. Crop rotation. This card was added to the Game Changers list, and who was the first person that I texted? It was you, and I'm like, why is crop rotation on the Game Changers list? This card is not that good. Listen, we can debate this forever, and I'm not gonna discount your opinions, however correct they may be. But like, come on, it's like you're tutoring a land, like that's great, I guess, but how powerful is the land that you're tutoring really going to be? Sure, you could tutor a Gaia's Cradle. That's great in the CEDH, all this new meta where everyone's trying to play their Gaia's Cradles and untap them, but like, come on, like in any other bracket, how good, like, let's ignore CEDH. How good is crop rotation in any bracket other than 5?
It's incredible.
Okay, so you're just gonna say it's incredible? Like how? Like what are you tutoring for?
It's a copy of your best land. It's a tutor.
But what's
for
your
best land?
But
and
what's your best
it's
land?
free.
Like, what's your best
Imagine
land?
Imagine a free demonic tutor, and it puts it onto the battlefield.
Okay, but like, what's your best land that you're searching for? I mean, I could name a couple options, but I want to hear what you think.
Well, so essentially this allows your mana base to become instant speed interaction. You've got Town Gates of Madara. You've got any land that taps for multiple, so you can grab something like your If you're not playing game changers, you can play your crystal veins, things that tap for multiple, so your crop rotation becomes effectively a ramp spell, right?
Mm.
You've got things like Tron lands that you can get multiples of. You can get things like Inventor's Fair that search for other things. You can get lands that turn into creatures. It like I said, it turns your mana base into a much stronger addition to your deck than normal. I'm not saying it's on the same level as Seedborn Muse, but it's a really, really strong card for a reason. I think it's on here for a reason.
Okay, well, when you put it that way, you make me look like a fool, but like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not going to discount from the fact that it's a good card, but like, come
Yeah,
on.
and I totally get it. You're only tutoring for a land. It's a restrictive tutor, but it's there's so many tiny things that make this card so good. It's if it was 2 mana, not a game changer. If it was enter tapped, not a game changer. If it were a sorcery, not a game changer. There's so many ways that you could make this card more fair. If it tutors it to hand, not a game changer. You know,
Well, let
but
me
it's
let
just
me put it.
all of those aspects. 1 mana, instant speed. You get to sacrifice a land, which is an upside in most decks. It goes onto the battlefield untapped. I mean, so many good things in one card.
Let me put it this way: is the whole idea of a game changer is that it puts you into a. If you have any game changers in your deck, instantly, by definition, you have to be at like a bracket 3, right? I'm not saying that you can't have, be a effective bracket 2 deck and have game changers, but like you get the idea. If you have game changers, the idea is that you're a bracket 3. So if you have a bracket 2 deck, 0 game changers, and crop rotation is the one card that you put in, what are you really tutoring for that's going to be that game changing card in a bracket 2 deck?
Well, it's less about being a game changer, less about searching for a strong card, but it essentially in that paragraph that I mentioned at the beginning, Gavin says game changers efficiently search for their strongest cards.
But is a land in a bracket 2 deck going to be your strongest card? I mean, I guess it depends on the deck. I guess it.
It doesn't have to be your strongest card, but this crop rotation allows you to, like I said, it allows you to turn your mana base into something much stronger than it is.
Okay.
It allows you to play removal in your mana base. It allows you can protect your things. You can mana fix with crop rotation. You can sacrifice a forest and find an island. like, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I get why you think this card should be off the list, but I think it's just too efficient. There's so many other ways that this card could be balanced that it just isn't.
Here's what I'll say is that if we say that the card is flexible, I love that. Efficient, I think that depends. Um, I maybe both. Let's just leave it at this. Hey, I'm not a farmer. Okay, I don't know a whole lot about this whole side of things, but we'll see what people come up with, I guess, with this one. I'm not convinced. If someone can convince me, different story. But crop rotation, I don't know. Might as well be a big question mark on the front of this card.
Yeah. All
But with
right.
that,
We've got multicolored up next. These consist of Grand Arbiter Augustine IV, Notion Thief, Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow, Aura Shards, Winota Joiner of Forces, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy, and Coalition Victory. Now you'll notice that 4 out of 7 of these are commanders. And this is a tough one for me. I think without a doubt, Grand Arbiter and Yuriko should stay. The Grand Arbiter simply because a stacks piece in the command zone that is this strong and this one-sided is really, really good. I don't really need to say much more. It reduces your things and makes your opponent's things cost more. It's a stacks piece in the command zone that's just going to keep coming back in colors that are very good at keeping it alive and controlling and interacting on the stack. Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow, very, very strong commander. There's really only one way to build the deck, and I don't think that Yuriko plays very effectively at lower power brackets.
Mm,
It's just all gas. Kinnan as well, I think can stay.
yeah,
Kinnan
definitely.
basically builds the same way he's in Simic. makes you
Who would have thought Simic is
makes
good?
you
It's crazy.
makes you oodles and oodles of mana, and then gives you a way to use infinite mana. Um, Winota, I haven't played against her at any lower power bracket, so I can't truthfully say I think she might deserve to stay on, but that could be up for debate. Um, so I think most of these commanders can stay regardless of their ability to relegate themselves without the game changers list. Notion Thief, he can stay here.
Yeah.
Personal experience, he's he can hang out here. Or Shards is an interesting one. I have not played against it, but I can see the case for it to be here. Just with how easy it is to make tons of small creatures in Selesnya. And Coalition Victory, get out of here. You didn't even deserve to be banned. We don't have to. We can just end that here. Coalition Victory, get out.
Yeah, the way that I'm looking at it, I mostly agree. So Kinnan, I think is great um in
I'm gonna go shit real
command
quick. You
zone.
can keep talking.
Sure. So I think Kinnan is great in the command zone in the 99. He's just what he does is unparalleled. Grand Augustine I think could fit either way, but same idea there. Yuriko at the helm. There's just nothing like her. I think Winota kind of the same thing for me. I haven't actually really seen her. I don't think I've ever played against a Winota, but I know that she does a lot of really cool things, so I'm not really in a position to say whether or not she deserves to stay. But I do like what she's got going on because I know that she does very well in some tournaments. Notions Thief, that's a disgusting thing to play against your opponents. And that should not be long for the world, but it is long for this list. Aura Shards is going to be very similar to me. I haven't seen anybody play it. I don't love it because I think in like those lower brackets, it depends on the deck that they're playing. But I don't always see a crazy number of artifacts enchantments. So I think it does great things against the right deck, and especially in CDH. I can see why it's very good there. But yeah, I don't. I think it's a very powerful ability. I mean, it's obviously powerful. It's just basically free value because you're already, as Selesnya, making a lot of small things, getting a lot of those ETB triggers, and this is just a big bonus is that your opponents aren't allowed to have artifacts or enchantments. Gets rid of their rocks, gets rid of whatever effects they got going on. Um, yeah, pretty nasty. Now, Coalition Victory is the only thing that I'm gonna say where I kind of like this card. I don't know. There's something about Coalition Victory that just excites me. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. Like nowadays, that's not the hardest thing, to get going. Now, granted, as a what is that, 8 mana sorcery, 3 plus Wooburg, like it's not always the easiest casting cost, but if you got a land of every basic land type, that kind of goes. If you have what is it, Omo Queen of Vesuva makes all your lands every land type. Um, that solves that side of things, and then getting the creature of every color. Like it's not the hardest thing to piece together, but I guess it just depends on what the rest of your deck is trying to do. If this is your only win con, like I don't really know about all that, but I think this is a really fun card, and I haven't seen it been played yet. And I don't know if a whole lot of people have been talking about it outside of it getting unbanned, but I just think it's a really fun card, and I I don't disagree. I don't think it really has a place on the game changers list for that reason. That no one else is really doing anything with it, but there's just something about it that can't make me say I hate this card. I think it's bad. I think it's a really cool card. I love the you win cards that are more interesting than just, oh, if you have a lot of life, you win, or if if
Agreed.
you
Agreed.
whatever else it is. So I don't hate it. I don't hate it, but
Yeah.
it probably doesn't have a place on the list. So that's all I have to say.
Agreed. All right. Next up, artifacts. So here we have Chrome Mox, Grim Monolith, Lion's Eye Diamond, Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, Panoptic Mirror, and the One Ring. I really only have one thing to say about this. 6 of these cards deserve to be on the Game Changers list, and Panoptic Mirror does not.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main reason this one's banned or on the Game Changers list is because it was banned for its ability to imprint an extra turn spell and cast it every turn. But it's so much mana to do that. It's incredibly telegraphed. You don't get to activate the mirror. You activate the mirror to exile it, and then you get to cast the extra turns. If you have an extra turn spell underneath it, you get to cast it on your upkeep. So you have to play this, pay a lot of mana to activate it, and then it has to survive a turn rotation. That's not broken.
Yeah.
That's just a card that people don't like. It's an effect that people don't like seeing happening. It doesn't matter if it costs 11 mana or however much mana. I think that can come off.
Yeah.
Everything else deserves it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that makes this a little bit better is being able to imprint on the end step before your turn. Yeah, your turn. But the best reason why this deserves to stay is just that infinite extra turns. It effectively is a 2-card combo for infinite extra turns. You can't do a lot better than that. Even
Wait, you
with
think
all
it
that
deserves to
mana.
stay?
I mean, again, just by definition, yes. I don't think that this is at the same level of these other game changers when they significantly give you the upper hand, put like, maximizing resources, giving you all this stuff moving forward. But I think it's just by definition, you can't take it off because this is a 2-card combo infinite extra turn spell. Doesn't matter. I mean, it takes a ton of mana, yeah, but like there's like basically, if you play a Panoptic Mirror and you're able to survive until your next turn, like the game is just over, right? Or and you can there's all these ways to protect it, giving your artifacts indestructible, playing artifacts at instant speed if you have the man. Like there's a lot of things that you can do here. If you had affinity for artifacts, there's a lot of crazy ways to break this very easily, and that's why I think that it deserves to stay.
Fair enough. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
The last category we have are the lands. These are Sarah's Sanctum, Gaia's Cradle, Ancient Tomb, Field of the Dead, Glacial Chasm, Mishra's Workshop, and the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. I don't have too much to say about these. I think this 7 can stay. I think I'm happy with these. I know you probably have a problem with at least one of them, but I think these 7 are very good.
Which one do you think that I have a problem with?
Oh, maybe the
I already know
Field of
what
the
you're
Dead
gonna say.
one.
Look, so
Yeah.
Field of the Dead, if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, sure. And then a special little lady named Toph the First Metal Bender got spoiled, and now all of a sudden I'm Team Field of the Dead. Right? Team Field of the Dead, yeah, that's me. This card is insanely good. Yeah, I think that it's great. I mean, other than Toph, I don't love it because I mean, I normally don't like lands that enter tapped, but it really only creates these 2/2s when lands ETB, and I guess you can like flicker lands, whatever. But other than that, I don't see how this is game changing. But with Toph, oh my god, is this a game changer? It's disgusting how the game changes if this is in your Toph deck. um, yeah, so that's about all that I have to really add on these cards. Except my only question is like the Tabernacle. I mean, you know, I think it's really great that like its ability, but like how much is it? How much is it nowadays? That's like the only thing I'm gonna leave with because a lot of these cards are kind of not all of them, but some of them fit under that category where, the barrier to entry on playing these cards, unless we're talking about proxies, is just like the price. Like, dude, that card's like what thou? Like, I couldn't even tell. I'd have to look it up. Um, I'm gonna look it up. Give me a second. Like $3,000. This card's like $3,000. Like, if you're paying 3,000 to put a Tabernacle in your deck, like, honestly, be my guest. Good for you. If you're spending that much. That's all that I have to say about him. Though great card. With
Yeah.
regardless.
All right, so those are our thoughts on the game changers and the power brackets. I think a lot of these cards are going to be here to stay, but there's definitely some that Thomas and I would like removed. Thomas, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, that's about everything that I had. I'm excited for sure to see what kinds of changes that they make in the future. The game changers is going to be a list to look out for. I think that's gonna. There's a lot of questions surrounding, what makes a game changer and where they're going to go from there, especially with cards being printed. But with the bracket system, I think that so far it's been kind of a slam dunk. I mean, there's not much more else that I think really needs to change because they really hit it, being that alternative to the turn zero conversation. So I love it so far.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks everybody so much for watching. We'll put all of our links to our socials down in the description below. If you want to follow us on any of those, feel free. Please subscribe on YouTube, like the video. You can feel free to also find us on Spotify and soon to Apple Podcasts. So thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later.
Thank you guys. See ya.